Hi, I'm Barbara Moret, and the first memory that I have of Harbor Covenant was back in 2005. I came there for the first time with my mom and dad, Alta and Bob Doremus, and when we walked in, we were just visitors, and it just felt like it was the right place to be. So I have been going now to Harbor Covenant for what, almost 20 years. And the reason that I continue to go there is because of the people and because we love people. We love inside our church and we go out in the community and try to reach people for Christ. I love my church.
Hi, I'm Jolene Lemke, and one of my earliest memories of Harbor Covenant is Kathy Edinburgh was my son's Sunday school teacher. And why I've stayed at Harbor Covenant is basically because I love the people there. And now Kathy Edinburgh is in my church small group. So it's kind of like a full circle moment. And it all has to do with people. I love the people there.
Well, we have been at Harbor Covenant since 1986, and we were just talking about why we've stayed so long. Do you want to go ahead?
Well, I think that one of the reasons why we stayed so long is it's like a family. Once we were in it and new relationships, we just felt that how could you leave a family? And this is where our sons grew up in and had their friends, and we got support going through those childhood years with them, and it just wouldn't feel right leaving it because it's our church family.
Yeah, we were invited to Harbor Covenant by a neighbor who has since passed away, but I remember not really understanding what a covenant church was, and so one of my first memories was asking Barb Hansen if Harbor Covenant had a seminary, because we weren't really sure what a church would be like if there weren't a seminary that the pastors went to.
And those neighbors were John and Lorraine Roddy. They were our next door neighbors, and it was just a conversation that they invited us to. And I remember sitting in the sanctuary the very first Sunday, and Ernie was preaching. And then, as he did several times, but not often, he just broke into song and sang as part of the sermon. And that was kind of unique, and I enjoyed that. And we just felt like it was home after that.
I do remember when we first started, there was only one service, which was kind of nice because you really got to know lots of people. And there was a lot of references to the Norwegian and Swedish heritage, because that's the Covenant Church is from the Swedish denomination, or the Swedish, somehow there's a Swedish influence.
And some of the hymns were actually the old Swedish melodies, the lilting kind of sounds back and forth, and that was kind of fun. I remember there was a men's group, Promise Keepers, and a group of guys went to that, and subsequently I've been in a men's group made up of several people from the Harbor Covenant and several people from elsewhere for the last 30-some years, and that has been a great blessing in my life to be meeting with the same guys through so many different stages of our lives. So I can't say enough about the value of those relationships.
The other thing I remember is starting MOPS at Harbor Covenant. We had quite a few people that came to the church because they were in MOPS, the mothers of preschoolers. And that was in 1987. And it was at our church for about 6 years. And Barb Hansen used to be the kind of the main instructor person, and lots of people helped in the nursery with the kids. Lots of people that aren't any longer with us, but it was just a really special time to connect with young families, young women, and even men. There were people that would come in and help with various projects we were going to do, and so it was a good connection time.
My name is Sherry Bollinger, and I was lucky enough to follow my parents to Harbor Covenant. They had been introduced by their dentist, John Olson, and immediately got involved with the choir, which is something my family has always been a part of. And so I joined the choir. I started probably maybe even the first part of the year of 1989 before Kim. And So I had myself, my husband sometimes, and my two kids, one that was in third grade, and my daughter Jessica, who was in high school or nearing high school. And music was certainly a really big part. The family was a big part. I knew I couldn't play hooky on a Sunday morning because my parents would know that I was supposed to be at church. But then again, it was just such a support group through so many years. Like Kim said, we had a trio that got together with a prayer group before choir, and all everything you needed to have the resources to raise kids and be your best self and be an asset to others. It was all there for us, and I still believe it is. And every year, every new generation that comes, and I love being involved with the little kids. It just energizes that feeling of faith and community and how it all works together.
I would agree.
Yay.
Hi, my name is Kim Stokey, and I started attending Harbor Covenant in 1989. And I brought along my 5-year-old and my 2-year-old sons. My husband doesn't attend church, and so we started coming together, and I jumped into choir right away. They had a welcome dinner to start the season, and that's what I loved the support from my family, for my boys. Oh, strong men of faith,
Yeah.
role models, all these years. That was so awesome in my boys' lives.
I'm Joanne Cochran, and my early memory of the church was I arrived the very last Sunday of 1983 with Gordon, newly married, and they ushered us to the front row of the high school auditorium. And my why I've stayed all these years, because I've loved the church. I've loved how they present the gospel and the story of the encouragement of going on in your life, and all of the friends that I've had. And also, I love the years when we had the sanctuary choir, and Gordon and I used to sing in it.
Hi, I'm Sandy Johnston, and we moved to Gig Harbor in 1990, and where we lived, we had to drive by that church, and we kept thinking, okay, we'll just stop and go. And everyone was always so friendly there that we thoroughly enjoyed it. And then over the years, I got to helping out in the office and helping with these books over here that they made. So, Ardell's been gone now for a while, but I'm still going to continue coming to our church just because it's the people are my family.
Okay, we are Sandy and Steve Anderson, and what?
What?
Oh, you're waving at somebody. Okay, and our first real memory of Harbor Covenant Church is the first day that we walked into the mortuary church family in the early spring of 1982. And we were not church people at that time. We hadn't had any experience with church family or church culture or religion or faith particularly. But we had hit a point in our life where we had had a terrible loss. Our oldest son was killed the Thanksgiving before, and we were open. And by a series of events, which I won't go into, we decided to try this new little church that was starting, we heard via the grapevine, at the mortuary. So we stumbled in there, a small group of only 40 people. We didn't know anyone in the entire room, And we were glad about that because we didn't want to run into longtime friends. We didn't know what we were doing. And we walked into that little place and we were greeted and seated and surrounded by love of people and God, and drawn into that little tiny chapel place, spiritually and physically and emotionally. And we sat there for several weeks and just cried our eyes out during the sermons and during the music. And everybody just sort of surrounded us, and they were supportive and comforting. And so slowly we realized that that was our place, that we wanted to learn about the faith that we were wondering about and learning about church family. And that was in the early spring. I think Ernie came over to our house after that a couple weeks later and drew us into the arms of God. And that kind of began our spiritual journey, and we've been with the church family ever since. And I think that the question about what has kept us here and what has excited us over the years is that no matter what we have learned, we've learned a lot about what a church family is. And we feel like we were kind of born again into that church. So even though we were 45 at the time, we were babies in Christ. And so we were raised up by those people who were ahead of us, way ahead of us in their faith journey. And we learned from them. And they taught us what it meant to be a Christian. We discovered over the years that we didn't always agree with our church, every single person in our church family, with different areas of, I won't say theology, but we also learned that we could agree to disagree and still be faithful to our family. And I've loved that as our family has grown and changed and become still a bigger, grander, wonderful church family. And so we're really happy to be here.
We just stayed there with warts and all, and disagreements and all, and it's our family, and we can fight and talk and agree or disagree and be fine.
And I could tell us some lessons I got from some of the elders who are now gone, but boy, they let us know exactly what you're supposed to do in a church, so we figured it out. Thank you. Thanks, Harbor Covenant Church.
Forgot to tell them that Ernie sang to us in those days. Ernie sang to us at the front of the church.
Singing pastor, yeah, that was a new experience, wasn't it?
We transferred down from North Seattle in the early 80s. A friend of ours had recommended Harbor Covenant Church because it was similar in format and style to the church that we had attended in the North Seattle area. As a matter of fact, he was the architect for our current church. But we went there and just fell in love with it. And at that time, we were attending church at Gig Harbor High School in the auditorium. And what impressed me so much was that when it came time for the choir to stand up and sing their worship songs, they all left the congregation, went down to the stage, and there was nobody left in the congregation because everybody was a singer. But that's one of my early memories of Harbor Covenant Church.
I think what has kept us around is the vitality of our church. And we believe that when you join a church, it's kind of like a marriage. You know, you're in it for the long haul. And so we have enjoyed the church and the preaching and all the people, and have really made our home there and raised our kids there, which was really wonderful. And I just think we're very blessed to have been able to be at Harbor Covenant all these years.
We've been very, very strongly supported. We've been involved in Alaska Ministries for over 30 years, but the church has just come and held us up and supported the youth ministry, particularly in Western Alaska, over the many years. And we've just it's been a blessing, just a total blessing to be involved with this dynamic church.
And one of my earliest memories, we had a MOPS group years ago, which is Mothers of Preschoolers. And so when the ladies who were in charge of that would come for their meeting before the day of MOPS, they had all their little kids. So I took care of them in the nursery. I think I probably had somebody else too. But anyway, there was a lot of boys. And they were very active. So we would fly airplanes, paper airplanes down the hallway and do all kinds of really fun things to keep them occupied. And that was really a really fond memory of mine.
I guess one last memory I would like to offer up was that when we first became involved with Alaska Ministries, I didn't want to go. I was invited to attend this little gathering up in Alaska, and I just couldn't see being a part of that. And Ernie Hansen had served at the Covenant radio station in Nome, and I knew from the various stories that I'd heard that he really didn't, he and Barb did not really enjoy being in Nome, Alaska. So when I went to talk to him and get advice, I was positive that Ernie would say, no, don't go. And I said, Ernie, what should I do? And he says, well, I think you ought to go. And I said, well, that's God speaking, so we went.
Yeah, and I said, if you're going to go, then there must be something for me to do too. So we went and just had a really hard working time, which was wonderful, but just a glorious time over the years in Alaska, growing as believers and in relationship and just enjoying the people there. It was just wonderful. And some of the other things that we really appreciated were our kids being in ministries like just the Vacation Bible School that just finished, them being in that, and in junior high and high school. And, it's just been such a blessing in our life to have consistency in our spiritual walk. And Harbor Covenant has really been a mainstay in that.
It's been a great time. Great time. Great friends, great church.
Oh,
Good
one
times.
thing I do remember, we had a covenant group, which is like a small group. And so we were together like maybe 5 or 10 years. And Ernie used to start coming to visit us occasionally. And he would say, okay, you guys have been together long enough. You need to break up and start a new group with other people. But we never did. We didn't listen to him. And hopefully this September, we're going to have a reunion of all those people to come over and have dinner at our house and visit. So, and some of them still go to Harbor Covenant. So that was a real blessing having them.
Those among the living.
Well, my earliest memory is Denny Waldron and Marlene inviting us to come to church. And our first time at church, we met Alda and Bob Pritchard. And of course, they were very welcoming and encouraging and asking us about young life and how can we get involved. And it just felt very comfortable and felt like home.
That was in 1988, and we had just moved to the area and got invited, I think, the first week we moved in. And we came and have never left. The people and the teaching of the Word. From Ernie's founding, who was just so passionate about teaching the Word, to every pastor we've had since, including Michael now for so many years. Just a really solid biblical teaching and truth and welcoming people, and it's our family. It's our family away from our family.
That's what I would say is it's just this strong sense of family and community and supporting each other through the ups and downs, and keeping the main thing the main thing.
Well, after we moved to Gig Harbor and settled, we weren't finding what we liked in the faith that we grew up, the religion, the one that we grew up in. And so my neighbor and I started coming to different churches, and we kept coming back to Harbor Covenant. And I got involved with the some of the children programs, and we started coming all the time. And
one answer to that question is she was Methodist and I was Lutheran. And this was a great common religion base that we really enjoyed, and the people.
And it was MOPS. I think MOPS was a ongoing thing which always brought me to the church. And I met a lot of people and invited them, and they ended up coming to the church. And one of my memories, I know that's another question, is I never really had a Bible study like the study that the women did with Barbara Hansen, and mentored by people 20, 30 years older than you. It was my favorite part for many years, is that Tuesday's Bible study, maybe? I forget what they called it at the beginning.
There was a gentleman that greeted us every Sunday. His name is Bill Glazebrook, and he's passed. Great gentleman. And he was the person that just made you smile and want to be there. He just was this bigger-than-life personality that was always positive. And once you open, you come in through the doors and you see Bill, and you just wanted to stay. So that was a wonderful part of the time that he was with us.
What's kept you around all these years? Why have you stayed?
Well, we have a lot of friends here. I mean, it's our children grew up in the youth program, which was an amazing program for them, and they continued their faith, which we really appreciate. And the people that we know, that we sit next to and see at fellowship after the services are wonderful, and our small group is amazing. I mean, we've been quite a small group of 10 for the last so many years, and that's just part of the glue that holds us all together in this faith walk that we are on.
When our children were in the high school years, many of the friends which had come, I had invited or had just come, left the church so their kids could go somewhere else. And a few came back, but not many. And I never felt that I could do that, because I just was connected with the church, and I believed in what they did, and I was a part of the worship team and the music for a long time, and the children's. So I never even thought of leaving. So, and I'm glad I didn't.
We love Harbor Covenant. We love the people. And it's been a great part of our life, and we look forward to many more years.
My name's Jeremy Bryant. This is my daughter Elsa, and this is my son Aiden. And I found Harbor Covenant Church in 1984 when my mom was pregnant and seeking a community to be a part of. She first started going to Harbor Covenant in Barb and Ernie Hansen's living room during their Bible study. My earliest memory was actually being rowdy in the portables with Jesse Edinburgh, Sig and Kathy's son, running up and down those ramps that we had before we had the addition built in the 90s. And we had, I just remember that we would tolerate the MOPS sessions, and we would escape as quickly as possible to go pick huckleberries and run through the woods behind the portables. So what keeps me coming is that it's always been a fantastic community. There are times when your family is, they love you, but they aren't exactly what you need at that moment. And this church has always been a wonderful family to me and my entire family, including my kids here, the newest additions to our family. They support us through thick and thin, and I couldn't ask for a better community of people to be a part of. I know that there's probably a more pious answer to that question, but the truth is that the people are the hands and feet, and they do a great job. So I love this community, and I plan to stay here for a long, long time.
Well, I got transferred up here. I joined a company, and we have some very dear friends that lived in the Pasadena area, Gloria and Jim Ingwall, and they are lifelong Covenanters, and they recommended Harbor Covenant Church. So I came up initially by myself for about 5 or 6 months while Sammy was still in Pasadena, and started going to Harbor Covenant Church. And the first person I met at Harbor Covenant Church was Steve Grubbs, who was an associate pastor. And we became good friends, and then Sammy came up, and the rest is history. That was 1979.
And when I arrived, I was happy to be here, and I continued to come with Bill. So Bill was the initial reason, and then Steve Grubbs was a wonderful pastor that brought us here. And then John Kimley was a part of the church and got me involved. So I was helping people do spiritual gifts and evaluation, and loved that. And from there, I just joined the staff as Director of Pastoral Care when Michael arrived. And I just enjoyed so much being a part of the staff, being a part of the community. And I think what I really love and like to see continuing in our church is how we reach out into the community and serve. And not only the community, but all throughout the world. And we are doing that, and we love that. So reaching people for Christ is our mission.
What's kept you both around all these years?
I think the wonderful people that we have here, I think the opportunities that we have to grow in our faith and to be connected with Jesus, which we then connect with others and show the hands and feet of Jesus Christ in the love for one another.
And we like living here. That has a lot to do with it. And we would not have met you, Josh, if we hadn't been going to Harbor Covenant Church, right? Right. So.
Thank you so much.
Yes, appreciate it.
A number of us were attending Tacoma Covenant Church. And then my husband took a sabbatical to go to Wisconsin for a year. And we returned in the summer of 1979. At that point, Tom and others were beginning to talk about founding a church in Gig Harbor. So we began to meet, and the Covenant Church provided kind of a helper pastor for us as we proceeded. And we began to meet in homes, and that was a lot of fun and excitement. And then an early memory, well, some of my memories are kind of funny because we met first at Haven of Rest Mortuary. And our two sons, of course, would go with us. And they were about maybe 4 and 6 or 6 and 8. And they would go with my husband to the church or to the mortuary in the morning to set up. And one day when they arrived, there was somebody in a casket in a room. And my son, and this gentleman had glasses on. And my son said, "I didn't know they wore glasses." And so we had some unique experiences in the early days. But most of the fun was watching people come and actually being in a position to watch their lives transform. Why did I stay all these years? Well, we were invested in the church. And as things, you change pastors, things change. But just moving forward to support the pastors who came. And today, it's such a delight to see young people, high schoolers, babies, and the church thriving as it is. So I always think, as I look at my life now, is this eternal or is it temporary? And to invest in the eternal.
I'm Iva Lou Chestnut, and my husband and I came here in 1997 when we retired. And I had been in the Covenant Church in Bellevue, so I felt very comfortable in the Covenant Church. And it was very friendly, was my experience. And so we were going to visit various churches, but we went to the Covenant. Oh, and Margaret Olson was my first friend because I had started Bible Study Fellowship, excuse me, 1 week after we moved here, and she was my discussion leader. And then we visited the Covenant Church, and she was the greeter at the door. So I always said that Margaret was my first Gig Harbor friend, and she really proved to be a dear friend. And she and Warren had us over for dinner, and that just hardly ever happens. And we just became fast friends. And then I felt the same warmth and friendship that I had experienced in Bellevue. And we decided we wanted to take membership because then we were feeling like we wanted to really belong and get involved, which we did. Excuse me. And the reason, and then my husband's been gone for about 14 years, but both Larry and I just loved Ernie. He was the pastor, and his wife, Barbara, was on the Women's Commission, and I was asked to join that, which I did, and I so thoroughly enjoyed being part of that ministry. And Barbara just really had a special place in my heart. And I just, after my husband was gone, I just stayed because that's where my friends were. And we both loved Michael, and I just wanted the continuity of staying on and having the same friends and the same pastor, and I've been there ever since.
Well, I'm Patty. This is Rick
Hi.
Jameson, and I have been at Harbor Covenant for over 30 years. It was 1990 when I moved here from Texas with a growing family, and they were all young. First week we came, we visited Harbor Covenant, and we were greeted as newcomers, and so we had to stand up and tell our names and where we were from. And so everybody in the sanctuary, would look at us and knew who we were. But then the amazing thing was that night we went home, and who came and knocked on our door but Tom and Verna Heron. They lived on the next block. Little did we know that Ernie used to live across the street from where we lived. And same floor plan house. And Tom and Verna came over and invited us over for dessert that night. And we both had, I had 4 kids, they had 3 at the time, and so they were all very young. So it was just great to get connected. Soon after that, there was VBS. The kids went to Vacation Bible School, and the rest was history, because once they got to know everybody, then they wanted to go back.
Hi, I'm Rick, and that person she went to church with first was Tom, her
That's
first
right.
husband. So I'm the second husband. We met.
The best one.
We met in '04. That's when she brought me to church. So that's my first memory of Harbor Covenant, coming to church with Patty.
I couldn't have gone anywhere else. People knew my history. People knew my kids. I knew their kids. Just didn't feel right going anywhere else. And then excited about worshiping there with Rick.
And for me, it's the outreach in the community, specifically Northwest Furniture Bank. What amazed me and continues to amaze me is I love the Signature Ministry program, which really kind of focuses on 4 key ministries. So there's a chance to really have a bigger impact, both financially and with effort. I loved that concept. I got involved with the Furniture Bank. I remember this church was foundational in the Furniture Bank's start. And so that has always impressed me and continues to impress me, and why I keep coming to church at Harbor Covenant.
I'm Kathy Gates, and I started at Harbor Covenant in 1980. I think it was March or April. We had moved here in January, and I had gone to several other churches to find a place to worship for my family. I was very clear with God, telling him that I wanted a good Sunday school program for my kids, a good choir for me, a wonderful pastor. I had all these requirements, and I ended up at the chapel at the funeral home with none of the above. But I fell in love with everybody that was there. It was just a wonderful place, a wonderful bunch of people, and I've never left. So that's my first memory is really of that first Sunday that I was at the chapel when I told my husband and my kids that I was going by myself because I had no idea about the Covenant Church, what it was, or anything about it. So I came by myself and just never left.
Hi, my name is Jeannie Glazebrook, and my husband Bill and I moved to this area back in '85. And whenever we would move to a new town or everything, I would go to the local Bible and bookstore and find out which churches were in the area. And so they gave me a list of churches, and so after I dropped the kids at school, I went driving around, and the first church I came to was the Covenant Church. And I had grown up not too far from a Covenant church, so I was a little bit familiar with it and didn't sound like a scary place to go. And when I got there, Kathy was actually the church secretary and Ernie was the pastor, and I introduced myself, and then Ernie went back to his office and pulled a map out of his file drawer and gave that to me, and then we looked at it together. He showed me some areas in town, and so that was kind of where I got my kickstart in Gig Harbor, learning where things were. So Kathy was pretty much my first experience, right? And then I guess that's it.
Well, one thing that kept me around is that Ernie hired me. I was the church office secretary, they called us in those days, from 1985 to 2005. But way more than that, it was the church body who just became my family. I love the people in this church. Many of them have already passed away, that they were just like my spiritual parents, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful home, Christian home for me.
Harbor Covenant has actually been a home for our family, our 2 children, and my husband Bill and I. This just a real quick story. When we first came there and were going through the membership class, one of the things that the pastor said was talked about involvement in the church, and he said, look at your gifts and pick something that you are gifted in, and then get involved in that way. Don't sign up for every blessed thing on the calendar. And I thought that was really excellent advice. And then over the years, just our kids growing up in the church and the youth program, and I became children's pastor for 17 years. And then my husband actually led singing back in the day when we first came, so that was pretty cool. I was part of the worship team early on. So it's been ingrained in us as a family. And our community is important to us. When Bill passed away 4 years ago, this is the family that I'm sticking with. So you got me until I'm gone.
Doug and Julia Smith. We came to Harbor in 1995.
Yeah, well, I don't remember what year, but she reminded me it was 1995.
We became members in 96. And I think my first memory of Ernie is in our membership class. And we talked to him about changing churches, because we had been founding members of another church in the harbor. And he said it's okay to change churches. And he said it's okay, and he said as long as you don't walk away from God. And then after a question from somebody sitting here, he said it's okay not to go to church, just don't walk away from God. So that's...
Yeah, I mean, I remember the membership class. The one thing I like about this church is you can have an opinion, and the Bible says this, the Bible says that, but a lot of churches have their own idea of what's right and what's wrong, and this church, I think, they let you think a little bit. And there's lots of ways you can, say what the Bible really means or doesn't mean. And so that's what I really enjoyed. Plus, if you're asking, other things about, one thing I really liked was I think they're very friendly. I was able to talk to people talk to me, and I just felt like that I belonged to the church about the minute I walked in the door. So that's something I really like.
And we'd been in the harbor for quite a few years, and the first Sunday we knew a tremendous amount of people that came up and greeted us. And a lot of we have a son who is now 48 years old, but a lot of members of the church had children that were part of a youth group at the high school, Gig Harbor High, and that were active in our children's lives. So it was kind of like their mothers and dads took us in. And we've been part of the same small group for almost 25 years now. And that's really our core at church, are those people. Some of them have moved on to other churches, but we still get together all the time.
I think you develop friendships, and you kind of like to see them every Sunday and talk to them. I like what this church stands for, as for how they preach and what they believe, the basic core ideas of what a church should be for. I think that you can ask Julie what she thinks, but that's my opinion.
We've lived in the harbor for almost 50 years now, and that's really kept us in the harbor. And one of our children lives across the bridge, and our grandkids are local. They're all adults now, and we're about to become, in about 4 weeks, great-grandparents. So we're not moving anywhere anytime soon. So we love the harbor. Been in the harbor since there were less than 7,000 people out here, like some people sitting over to our left and grew up out here. So.
We were looking for churches. We had two little kids, one in junior high, one just starting in high school, and we needed to find a church that had youth activities for those kids. And we found it, and then we wanted a place where Jenny and I can fit in, and we could work within that party group. Well, we found that all in the same church. We tried about 4 other churches, and one was too old. They didn't have any little kids, and one was basically all the women working in the church and no men, and one was all men working and no women. We didn't like that so much, so we moved on to this church. And I don't know what else to say other than, and also we were invited into a small group, so just starting a small group. In our church, we're probably 4 new small groups. So we got into a small group with the Holdacks and some other people there. That turned out great.
So what drew me to the church was I ran into someone and she invited me to come and wash windows at the church. And when we went, I met different people, and I knew one of the ladies had gone through a really hard time in a personal level. And I asked her, I said, how was the church? And she said they were so supportive and loving. And it was just such a difficult situation. I knew if a church would stand with you through something like that was a place I wanted to be connected. And I love that they were always busy for God. And over the years, it's been such a joy to see our church reach out to the community, but also to each other, and really lift each other up. And one story that is especially dear to me, the pastor's wife, Barb, met me, and she said, what are you looking for in a friend? And I said, I'm looking for someone who walks. And she said, oh, you have to meet Linda Olson. And so Linda Olson and I became walking buddies, and we've been walking buddies for 38 years. So I love that the church cares about you as an individual, but also that you don't get a free ride. Everybody's got to do their share. And I love that about our church, that people are willing to be active and be reaching out to the community and do service. So I love that.
And I forgot to remind you guys that we've been here since 1985.
Yeah, so we've been here a long time. So, and we've raised our children, and so Mike and Steph are very active, and my daughter Teresa and her husband come, and when the grandchildren are home, they all come. So it's a real home for us.
What's kept you both around all these years?
I would say the people. You know, we've had some hard times, but you know, you're committed to the people and you love them and they're your body. And I think God calls you to be faithful. So that's what's kept us here, and we're so glad that we have stayed.
And I'm glad we've been able to find fellowship with friends all the time we've been here.
Yeah, so it's been a blessing in our life.
Eileen and I joined Harbor Covenant in 1989 through, I'll call, orders from my wife's mother, Barbara Peterson. And Barbara brought up 5 children, moved from Fircrest out to Gig Harbor, and found Harbor Covenant and told us about it. And so there we are. Eileen and I have been members since. Our daughter, Dawn, we adopted in China, and Dawn has been a member of the church for 29 years now. She was baptized in the church at about 8 months old, and all the family showed up that day for Pastor Ernie. And that's probably when all the family rose and went to the front, one of my fondest memories of bringing our brand new baby into the loving arms of Harbor Covenant. I also mentioned Pastor White, one of my memories of Ernie, and that was at the beginning of every service, we would rise and turn around and greet all the people, handshake them, who were standing around, and try to introduce ourselves to new attendees. And that was kind of his calling card, I would say. And I wish my wife could continue on with it. So anything other, should I say?
What's kept you around all these years?
Good question. Gig Harbor, and particularly Harbor Covenant, leaves people with a sense of community. I gravitate, so does Eileen gravitate, towards a community that gathers together, knows one another, supports one another through the good times and the bad. And that's what the loving arms of our church has given us. And I hope that continues on forever. That's what our daughter looks forward to when she visits, is to see Harbor Covenant and the family that she's grown up with.
We moved up here in September of 1992 from Pasadena, California. Happened to see the sign, Harbor Covenant Church. Decided to drop in on a Sunday. Pastor Ernie and Barb were at the door greeting us. Stayed for the service. And been here ever since because of the preaching and teaching that Ernie was doing was the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and it was biblical. And we both come from seminary backgrounds, and we were in Pasadena, active in our own church there. So that's where we came and who we met and how we stayed.
So when we came into the church, all the children were in with the sermon, and in the divots where there are now all these scanned cards were crayons and coloring books, types of things for the kids. And I said, this is the church for us. Any church that would have all those children and the din trying to hear the pastor over all the happy children in with their parents, because Sunday school was in the following hour. And we never went anywhere else. It was first church, and we stayed.
Well, for me, I would say it's our faith in Christ Jesus, our family with our children now and grandchildren, our friends, congregants that we've met and keep in touch with here at Harbor Covenant, and enjoying the presence of the community.
I would say it's the family of people that we've been with now 32 years. Great preaching, an extensive community, and we've shared life's ups and downs together, and wouldn't want to be any other place.
Well, I'm Lynn, and my early memory has to do with meeting the Pritchards. They're really the ones that got me started there, introducing me all around. And the other thing that I really noticed about Harbor Covenant people is that every Sunday that I would come, somebody new would come up to me and say, I'm I'm not sure if I've met you before, but I'm so and so, and they have to this day continued to be probably some of the friendliest people in any congregation I have ever been in, and that continues to today. Did you want to say something?
Hi, yeah, my name's Bjorn. I'm with Lynn, and I've more or less followed her through her Harbor Covenant days. The church has changed a lot, yeah, I think in a good way. And yeah, it's what I appreciate about the church is they let me show up. They don't ask me a lot of questions, and I feel like they don't have any litmus test that I have to be a part of. So I appreciate that openness and acceptance a lot. All right.
Well, what's kept you around all these years?
You know, I think like what Michael said, the congregation continues to expand and grow. And the Michael sermons are... I used to write a column for a newspaper, and you think that after 52 weeks of writing a column, it would get worse. But it gets better, and I think Michael has gotten better. He's like a good wine that's aged and gotten better. And I appreciate his humor and his thoughtfulness. And that's been a big part. Oh, and the brunch, too. The brunch has kept me around, too. Appreciate that.
I think one of the things that has me sticking around is that there is a desire to find out a way to live and how to live that way honestly and authentically. And I feel like over the time that I've been here that continues to grow, and the heart for that. We seek to do that. We're not always perfect, and even the admission of that has a lot to do with how I appreciate the authenticity of how it is that we seek to really be apprentices to God, and that continues again until today. And I sense that even with this generation that's here right now and the one that's coming up, that desire to continue to do that continues, and that is an incredible gift.
And one other thing about the brunch, it's not the brunch, which is fantastic, but it's the idea of continuing that community after the sermon's over. So you're not just in church for an hour and go home. You actually have some community afterwards, and I think that's really important for a church to do.
My name is Marcia Nolan.
And I'm John Nolan.
And we moved to Gig Harbor in 1990, came from Puyallup. We'd always been Lutherans. And so when we moved to Gig Harbor, we were looking for a Lutheran church, and nothing was quite the right fit for us. So the gentleman that was building our house was a member of Harbor Covenant, and every Friday when he'd come to pay his employees, he'd ask us if we'd found a church yet, and we said, no, not yet. So he said, I want you to check out my church. And we said, okay, next Sunday we'll check it out. And he said, you'll love it. He said, it's Bible-based, and the people are wonderful. And the minute we walked in, Barbara Hanson greeted us at the door and made us feel at home. The next Sunday when we came, she remembered our names, and that was it. That was our home. And John and I joined choir, and that was a highlight of us being at Harbor Covenant. Say something.
Hi.
I guess I do all the talking. Anyway, we showed up one evening to sing in choir, and Paul Pugh asked us what we were there for, and we said we want to sing in choir. And we loved it, and we felt like that was our gift. And we've enjoyed our time at Harbor Covenant. We feel like they're our family, and we love them, and they love us.
What's kept you both around all these years?
The church, of course, and the preaching, and the people. You know, our friends are wonderful, and we care about them. They care about us, and especially at the age that we are now, it's so nice to have people that check up on us occasionally and see how we're doing, and that's important. The camaraderie, yeah.
And we live on the water.
What's that got to do with it?
That's what keeps us here.
Oh, the water. We live on the water and we love it.
Dwight Mason.
And Dalen Mason. And we were part of First Covenant Church in Tacoma, where, what's her name?
The Bergquist?
The Bergquist, Bob Bergquist was the pastor, but Tom and Carolyn Holdyke were part of our church and really lived out in the harbor and had a desire to start a church out here.
And we had moved out here about 77, so it was kind of made it a little easier for us because we wanted to have a church that was closer where our kids could have their friends in church, and so we actually started meeting part of the time in our home. In fact, I think the first choir practice was in our home. I think Kathy Gates played the piano, and Jean Wright was the choir director. And we probably at that point had, maybe 6 people in the choir, something like that.
Well, there weren't more than 20 people in the church, I think.
Right. And then it wasn't too long that Ernie came and joined us.
And that was a big deal to call him to be a pastor, and just such a small group of people, and how are we ever going to afford a pastor?
Well, unfortunately, the covenant helped.
The covenant helped a lot.
Right. They pitched in and paid part of his salary for a while until we got going. He had an office up on Fosdick, and then we ended up free. I think the mortuary, the Haven of Rest, gave us the.
That's right.
Yep.
They let us use the room gratis, the chapel.
Yep.
So that was really great.
And then after about, we met there for a few months. Dalen was pregnant, and our last daughter, Katie, was born. So she is the first child born to someone in Harbor Covenant. So.
And there's a poem somewhere and all this stuff about that.
Oh, there is. Okay.
Yeah.
Warren wrote it.
Warren wrote it.
Warren Olson wrote poems for everything back in those days. So, yep.
Oh gosh, wonderful pastors. I mean,
The
Ernie,
people.
and then all the wonderful people we've met, and just.
Dalen couldn't leave. She's got a group. She's been meeting with 3 other ladies that started meeting about 40 years ago.
Right.
And they meet every Tuesday.
They're my
so
buddies. Yeah.
They wouldn't let her go.
Well, just, it was fun to be a part of a brand new church like that and see how everybody had to pitch in and do their part.
Mm-hmm.
When you're that small, I mean, you can't just walk out and hope somebody else is going to do it, because it takes the whole church to make it happen. And Ernie was so good about small groups. That was one of the things that he really had hoped for and studied, actually, is how small groups work within the church and bring people together.
And hospitality.
Hospitality.
I think his master's was on hospitality. So being a hospitable church was really important.
Yeah. And now it's so fun for us there's so many people that are gone now that were here that wish they could be here with us, but to see all these wonderful people here today is marvelous.
Lots of young families and
people we've known for so many years.
Well, and people that we haven't had a chance to meet yet.
Yeah, a few of those
keep
too.
coming, so that's really cool.
Signal Uddenberg, and I was a friend of George Daly. And George and Arlene Daly were members of the First Covenant Church in Tacoma. He invited me to a Bible study fellowship. At that time I was up in up in Seattle. And we got to be real friends, and they were starting this church out in Gig Harbor, and we lived in Gig Harbor. So we started attending in 1980.
Oh, and I'm Kathy Edinburgh, and my memory of coming to Harbor Covenant was because of Marlene and Denny Waldron. We all went to University Place Presbyterian Church together, and when they moved to Harbor Covenant, they told us about it, and we visited and stayed ever since. And for me, I guess it comes right down to the same thing, relationships and family. I kind of considered Harbor Covenant family, and one thing I have learned is that no matter what goes on, I'll always want to be at Harbor Covenant through thick and thin, through all the changes and differences through life. It's a great place to be. So I've grown there and love the people who are there and who come and who go.
And Josh, I'll say one more thing. We had our son when in 1984, and of course he was then, and as we were a part of Harbor Covenant Church, he grew up in the church, and that was an outstanding experience.
Well, I'm Helen Russell. I've been at Harbor Cove since 1982. 82. I started when we were still up at the mortuary. And right after I started, I also joined the choir. And I was in choir until they quit having choir. And I work helping with the kitchen and the coffee, and I've been doing coffee for a long time. But other than that, I'm here and there. Oh, mostly the programs and stuff that we used to put on with the choir. And we used to do plays, and not just concerts, but we'd also do the plays and stuff, both when we first started and also when Paul Pugh was there. And one of the ones I remember doing was when we did one that he had written his daughter in, and she sang parts. But a version of the Little Drummer Boy. Well, I know the people, and I've always enjoyed the sermons and the camaraderie that I have with the people there. And most of them know me.